Please watch the video until the end to experience the full arc of the story and the narrator's final revelation. Chapter 1. The Return. She always thought of returns as small funerals for things that might have been. The narrator, a woman who had watched the town change, and the people within it like tide lines on a weathered map, opened the story by remembering how Mara came back. Mara arrived with 2 suitcases and a silence so certain it seemed to fill the gaps between the gulls. The town had not been cruel to her. It had been ordinary. Salt rhymes on porches. The same bar on the corner with the same jukebox that played songs older than most of its patrons. Everyone knew Mara's family name, but the particulars of their grief had turned private as old photographs stacked in attics. Mara's first nights were spent on a second-floor apartment that looked out over the harbor. She stood by the window and listened to the boats breathe. She had a careful way of holding her hands, as if she were always cradling something small and fragile, something not yet ready to be shown to the world. Chapter 2. The Street Musician. On the 3rd evening after Mara's return, the narrator watched her cross the cobbled lane and stop, where a young man named Elias played a battered guitar beneath an amber streetlight. Elias had a voice that sounded like rain in a copper pan, unpolished, honest, and startling in its intimacy. His songs were not for the tourists but for those who remembered everything, and those who preferred to forget some things less than others. Their meeting was unremarkable. Mara dropped a coin. Elias picked it up. He smiled with an apology he did not need to offer, and she laughed for the first time since she returned. That laugh startled the narrator. It was a sound she had catalogued in her mind as proof that the heart can still find an exit to the open air. Over the weeks, the narrator observed small exchanges between them: a shared umbrella, a cup of coffee that went cold at the edges. A chorus hummed in unison while the town's neon lights blinked awake. Their affection was not violent or immediate. It arrived like weather, a slow, steady accumulation until the plain day was altered. Chapter 3. The Letter That Wouldn't Burn. There was a letter that Mara kept in the pocket of her old coat. Yellowed, edges softened by many furtive touches. The narrator had seen Mara read it in the shower steam and at dawn. As if it were a map she had not dared to unfold in daylight. The letter spoke of a life that might have been, of promises made by hands that later trembled under different burdens. Word came one night, like a low-tide unveiling a forgotten wreck. Mara's sister, Lila, had been ill when Mara left years before, and the illness had severed more than breath. It had undone Mara's earlier arrangements, broken the rhythm of her young life, and left her to carry an invisible ledger of obligations and guilt. Elias learned of the letter without her intention. He did not pry. He only brought a cassette tape one afternoon, an old habit of his, to record songs and spill them into the world. On the tape he pressed a song he said he had written for her. No, not for her at first, but for the small, brave woman who sometimes watched the tide from a window, as if waiting for an answer. Chapter 4. Confessions over coffee. The narrator loved the way truths arrived between Mara and Elias. Slow, clumsy, sometimes fragrant with shame. One afternoon in the cafe that smelled of cinnamon and old newspapers, Mara confessed that she had left to sort things she had not the courage to face at home. She admitted, with eyes steady now, and the city laid down like a map across her knees, that Gil had been a lodger she could never evict. Elias listened, not as a savior but as a witness. He told her of his father, who had been a storm of contradictions and small mercies, and of the way he learned to fix radios by opening them and listening for the wrongness. His confession was a small craft of his own. He had once missed a bus to be with someone who later thanked him silently by moving away. They were honest because honesty, the narrator felt, was the currency of their survival. Love, in their case, needed to be honest before it could be anything else. There were nights when Mara held Elias's hand and wept for reasons that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with a past that refused to be tidy. Chapter 5. The Night of the Storm. A wind came in that carried with it old weather and the scent of the sea taken inland. The storm knocked out power for hours, and the town settled into a cathedral of low, fearful noises. In the dark, Mara and Elias found themselves on Mara's balcony, wrapped in blankets and mutual tremor. It was there, beneath a sky that had forgotten its stars, that Mara confessed the things she had buried. She had once promised to leave with someone she loved, but the promise had been swallowed by duty and fear. She had resented herself for the choice, and loved herself for the survival, in equal measure. The narrator, who had followed these confessions like a tide follows the moon, fell for her with that particular tenderness reserved for people who keep their softest parts hidden and still bloom. Elias did not judge. He told her, instead, about a small bony dog he had once kept and lost to the road. He spoke of grief with the kind of gentleness that bends around sharp edges. In the hush left by the storm, they shared the cassette Elias had recorded. Songs that described a homecoming that wasn't about returning to the same place, but about finding the right person, with whom the idea of home finally made sense. Chapter 6, The Harbor's Promise. Spring arrived in fits, and with it the town's slow thaw. The narrator watched as Mara and Elias stitched themselves into the fabric of each other's days. Elias teaching Mara to listen for the small mechanical sounds of happiness. Mara teaching Elias the patient art of forgiving one's own choices. They did not rush toward a grand conclusion. There were moments of doubt. Days when Mara's gaze wandered toward the horizon, and the narrator could almost taste the old ache in her throat. But there was also laughter, sharp, brittle and warm, and the comfort of hands that had learned how to steady a cup, a shoulder, a heart. On the day the Harbor Festival returned, when strings of bulbs hung like constellations low above the main street, Mara and Elias walked among the stalls and found a small wooden boat for sale. It was imperfect, a splintered varnish, a patch on its side. They bought it together, humming the songs from Elias's cassette as they rowed it out into the harbor. The narrator watched them push off and felt a kind of proof that love can be improvised, that two people can mend what was once broken and make something seaworthy. As the boat drifted beneath a sky that had relearned its stars, Mara whispered a thank you, less to the sea and more to the man beside her. And for the first time since she returned, the narrator sensed peace in her posture. It was not an end, the narrator knew, but a beginning measured in small, steady strokes. If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, give the video a like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share the video with friends.